Back with us on the conversation, I'm speaking with the opposition leader, Mark Golding. We've turned to the vexed issue of crime and the high levels of insecurity that are in Jamaica and frankly have been in Jamaica for too long. The government grappling to match the criminals who are intent on causing harm and mayhem and have caused harm and mayhem. We're looking at the government's proposed response to the issue. The management of crime from the perspective of the resources available to the government. The National Security Minister, Dr. Horace Chang, says, look, as you said in the previous segment, that we've been spending more on the issues than any previous government has done. And he says what they're spending, the benefit of the spending is evidenced by, he said, well, it was the Prime Minister actually who said it, the police have prosecuted more, brought more cases before the court than any time before. Investigative capacity.
But there's no data to support that.
Oh, that's your response to that.
Yeah,
he hasn't shared the data with you in Parliament.
No.
So you take that not
well, I'm skeptical about it because, as I've said, there's only been one trial that resulted in a conviction in the under the anti-gang legislation in the last 5 years, when they said repeatedly that gang violence is a major source of murders in the country. So if you're talking about more effective prosecution and bringing cases to court, that to me is totally inconsistent with the facts that I'm aware of, which is that legislation has not been successfully deployed yet, and we're anxious to see it happen because we know that the gangs are the major source of mayhem in the country.
Yeah, the previous leadership of the PNP, there was a chorus. Where is your crime plan? Where is your crime plan? Where is your crime plan? We spoke about crime plan in the previous segment. I'm bringing it back now because I'm saying your approach to holding the government's feet to the fire where the crime management is concerned. Is it to ask for a crime plan, or is it to prescribe specific courses of action that they must take to change the realities that we're facing?
I'm more focused on the latter. I really feel that the strategy is what matters. And I don't think the strategy being pursued now is correct. I think it's ineffective. I think that yes, they've spent significantly more on law enforcement than the previous government could, because the fiscal space available to the current government has been significantly higher as a result of the success of the reforms under the IMF program, many of which we rolled out. Now, they're fortunate that they inherited that and they've enabled them to spend that money, but the results have been poor. With much less levels of expenditure, the average murders per year between 2012 and 2016 were over 300 less than they have been since 2016. So all this money is being spent, but we're not seeing it in positive results. And on top of that, they've been deploying states of emergency as well. And still, we have these terrible crime numbers. Jamaica is the number one country for murders in the Western Hemisphere. Number one in Latin America and the Caribbean and North America. So I don't know how they can be trying to sell to the public that they are doing a good job and they have a good plan. They don't.
But the National Security Minister has said, opposition leader, that look, many of the countries that are ranked better than us, where the management of the homicide situation is concerned, they have the benefit of using tools to suppress crime that we haven't even rolled out here and that there isn't support from the opposition for. So if we were able to use some of these tools, then we could be in a better situation. And I say that to say as well that the private sector organization of Jamaica has come out, Keith Duncan, in a recent statement to say that, look, we believe in and we support enhanced security measures. The opposition looks increasingly isolated here.
Why do you say that? We're not against enhanced security measures.
Yes, but the enhanced security measures that the government wants to use, but you're saying not that one.
No, that one is out, and it's not because of us, that's because of the court. The court has ruled that the use of a state of emergency as a policing measure is unconstitutional. Now that doesn't mean you can't have enhanced security. ZOSO is an enhanced security measure. It hasn't been fully deployed. The ability under 9.2 of the Defence Act to deploy the military in support of the police is an enhanced security measure. Cordons and search is enhanced. Curfews are enhanced. There are many tools in the toolbox. They have been talking about bringing some legislation, which I think they intend to call the Enhanced Security Measures Act or some words to that effect. I met with the Attorney General, myself and Senator Donna Scott Motley met with the Attorney General a year ago to discuss broadly what we thought could work
Yes.
in terms of a legislation like that. We've not had a subsequent meeting, at least I haven't. I think there was one call which I wasn't able to attend. We haven't really seen what they intend to do yet. But we are not against enhanced security measures. We're in favor of anything that will be effective as long as it doesn't abrogate the legitimate rights of the Jamaican people. And to my mind, detention indefinitely without charge or for prolonged periods of time without charge is not acceptable as a strategy.
And you believe in that, even if the detention of suspected gangsters for, I don't want to say an indefinite time, for a long time, the detention of someone like that or a group like that for a long time allows the police to build a case that can then convict them. You don't believe in that?
No, I don't. They must build their case and then charge the person and take them into custody. They can if they are at risk of committing offences, the law allows them to go in and hold them, and the Bail Act is quite clear that if they're a risk to the community, they can be deprived bail. Quite often what happens in a judge is that people get on bail is sometimes granted because the police and the prosecutors are not really well prepared for resisting a bail application. And the bail applications are made over and over again, and bail is denied, and eventually the court gets frustrated because there's nothing being brought to the case. Preparation is fundamental. You know, you can't. I don't think we can take away people's rights as a sop to the poor management of cases. The police and the DPP's office must be resourced adequately to do that job well, and I don't think there's any alternative to that. So please don't let the public think that we are not in favor of security measures,
Enhanced
what do you call enhanced,
Yeah.
increased, more effective. I'm not into the
opposition.
slogans.
Yes.
Right? All we are against is the unconstitutional use of states of emergency. We received a legal opinion from perhaps the most eminent Queen's Counsel in the country about 2 years ago, which indicated that, in his opinion, the use of a state of emergency, the way it was being used, was unconstitutional. We shared that opinion with the government. They never responded to it or told us they didn't agree with it or anything. From that moment on, I personally, as a parliamentarian, was uncomfortable because with voting in favor of the serial use of the states of emergency, because we swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And the whole idea that you can't have enhanced security other than through a state of emergency is a lie. And it is a lie which has been successfully propagated in the minds of the people by PR, but it still remains a lie. It can be done, and we're insisting that it should be done. The people have a right to be secure and safe, and the government must deploy the necessary measures to do that. We will support new legislation which gives the police and the soldiers a better chance, and we're prepared to discuss any particular measures around that. We are on the CMOC committee, which is a kind of EPOC for crime, looking at these things. So we're actively engaged in that.
In that vein, let me ask you this. Let me quote you what Horace Chang has said recently. He said, quote, "It is inappropriate to block executive attempts in the interests of the people." How do you interpret that? Do you take umbrage at that statement? Is it bland what?
We live in a country where people have rights. They were hard fought for. We're coming out of a history of brutalization, slavery and colonialism. And the Jamaican people cannot be put in a situation where those rights are taken away by the government of the day without being accountable to anybody except at an election 5 years later. That we have a constitution. It was the JLP government that under Bruce Golding that passed the Charter of Rights. We could have blocked it, but we were part of the development of it. It was coming out of the constitutional reform talks, which lasted nearly 20 years. So we joined with them, and it was passed, and it represents a modern or a more modern system of protections of the citizen. We must operate within that framework. And I think what Dr. Chang said there is very unfortunate, because to me it represents the road towards autocracy, dictatorship, and a type of society that we don't want in this country.
Recently, you had an exchange, put it no stronger than that, in the parliament with the Prime Minister, where he accused you and your side of the House, it's the House, it's not a part of party place, the opposition, of hypocrisy over your stance on the use of states of emergency and what the government is trying to achieve. When you put that beside what Dr. Chang has said, which you've taken umbrage with, do you get the sense that the government is trying to paint you and the opposition as obstructionist when it comes to matters that need to be implemented to make the people safer?
Well, look, they're playing politics with it by using language like that. It's clear that the Prime Minister has a sore toe when it comes to crime, because he went ballistic and proceeded with a diatribe when I asked for a statement as to what the government intended to do to deal with the upsurge that we were experiencing in crime.
And do you still see that statement is necessary from the Prime Minister at this time?
I do, because we haven't heard from him in any substantive way. Telling me to quarantine criminals in my constituency when he has as many in his constituency, and West Kingston is where the current flare-up is not helpful. We all know that there are social problems in inner city communities, and we need a strategy for addressing the problem, and it needs to be a strategy which the wider society is part of and accepts, and it can't be just short-term measures. It must have a medium and long-term aspect to it, and we're fully on board with trying to do that. We're not being obstructionist at all, but we didn't support the use of the state of emergency. At least I didn't. Some of my colleagues were prepared to go along with it, but that all ended when they called the election, and they didn't want to renew it during the election period. And right after that, the young men who brought the case to court won the case, and the court ruled that the use of it by the government in the way they were using it was a violation of the Constitution. So they must now come with a different approach, and that's what we're asking. What is the approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the minute we have left, a famous poet, it may have been Yeats, his name escapes me, but he provided the words to a poem that the heptones put to song, Book of Rules.
Yes.
And so he's just given a bag of tools, yeah? Shapeless mass, Book of Rules. If you were in office with the tools available to this administration, the same JCF with the complement problem, not at complement, below, the same JDF, increasing the numbers, the mindset of the people, and the way criminals have managed to embed themselves within the community. Can you look at the Jamaican people, Mark Golding, and tell them that you would be doing a much better job than this JLP administration?
Yes, we would be doing a much better job. First of all, our record at dealing with legislation and bringing legislation to Parliament quickly that is responsive to the current needs is there for all to see. A lot of scamming legislation, for example, we developed that in 6 months, passed it into law. Many scammers have been arrested and under that, and it has been a successful thing. Yes, scamming still remains a problem, but that tool is a main tool available to the police force. So we would be legislative more responsible. We would have a better strategy, because our focus is on the social piece and trying to deal with the causes of crime, treating crime and violent crime in particular as a public health issue to do with the way our people relate to each other. Parenting, why is violence so much part of the way in which Jamaicans operate when they're angry? Anger management. We have to get into those issues. It can't just be about giving police and soldiers the right to just go into a community, scrape up some youth, put them in Metcalfe or somewhere in St. Catherine there, and just having them for months on end while you try and build a case against them. The law doesn't allow it. You said shapeless mask and a book of rules. There is a book of rules, and they must comply with the rules.
Hear you on that. We are done with that segment. One segment to go with the opposition leader as we have this very important conversation.